Now, I know I've talked about this before, but I wanted to touch upon this again. This whole idea of alimony reform and what have you, and I'll be posting a link to a couple of articles below. But it's very interesting to see what's sort of slowly coming to crystallize. Women who earn rather well being penalized by in the divorce court. Now, what I think is really interesting about this is this slowly evolving conflict between traditional and conservative women who want to keep alimony laws intact the way they are, and other women who are earning more, a lot of earning their own, of course, and in some cases earning more than their respective ex-spouses, their men, and they want to get rid of it, especially lifetime alimony. There are a number of states that suffer from this deficiency. I mean, California is probably the most prominent one, but there are several others as well. I believe Florida, Florida, for example, has lifetime alimony, to the best of my knowledge. And I've said this before, but it's interesting that only now is there even a discussion of this kind of alimony reform, because it's become a quote-unquote non-gendered issue. Why? Because women are being affected by this too. And this also goes to show the futility of political activism and, say, the MRA. It's why I don't really see, one of the many reasons, the MRA's allies are really just all that relevant for the most part. Because we see, and have a gander at these articles, we see that if there is to be alimony reform, it's going to come not at the hands of men engaging in political activism, but because women feel essentially offended that they have to pay lifetime alimony or alimony for 20 years or whatever it might be. Women who are finally getting footed with the bill don't want to be footed with the bill anymore. And therein lies the rub, because if there is to be change, that change will only be facilitated by women's will. As I said, that the interesting thing about this conflict is a lot of the women who still want the eternal alimony in place, the ones who are more as the housewifey type, or the ones who just don't want to work or whatever, those are the ones that might actually come in conflict with these other women, because for the first time in history, you have a conflict work-wise, economically, between one subset of women and another subset of women. I would imagine one subset is larger than the other, though I don't know which off the top of my head. And this could be pretty interesting, because for the first time, because women are being affected by the divorce courts as far as alimony is concerned, there might be a conflict between those women and the women who just want to keep on getting their alimony checks all the time. But make no mistake, at the end of the day, this is all still just about women. I mean, look, if alimony could never affected women in any way whatsoever, would there even be discussion? Would there be online articles? No, it would just be business as usual. I mean, men wouldn't want to pay it, and they would still resent it, and they would be miserable and what have you. And I even see men writing articles in support of alimony laws. I mean, now, what's interesting, though, that I've often wondered why this is just so extreme, particularly in Anglo-Saxon countries. I mean, Germany has its own issues, but it does tend to be a bit more judicious, and it's not so much based on gender so much as assets. Now, you could argue that usually women earn less than men, hence the assets. Well, that's true. So that is an argument, I suppose. But in Germany, for whatever reason, they tend to be a bit more fair about all of this. A bit fairer. But, the more things change, the more they stay the same. If there's ever to be change in the political system, wide scale, it is almost certainly going to be brought about by women wanting to make that change. It's not going to be because of men caterwauling or complaining or whatever, or being active politically. The public and women are just not interested in hearing this message. I mean, you probably have observed this if you look at some of these assemblies that have taken place for so-called men's rights activists, that it's essentially an echo chamber of like-minded people. It's very rare. I mean, occasionally you'll see someone who's doesn't really belong there. I'm using air quotes there. Doesn't belong there. But it's very rare you'll find people are just interested in hearing the message or interested in hearing the difference. Yeah, like I said, every now and then you get a couple, but this is because mainstream media, mainstream society just isn't interested in that. Now, I'm not saying that they're interested in MGTOW. Do not get me wrong on that. Do not get me wrong on that. I'm not saying that at all. It's just that MGTOW doesn't really care about reaching out to mainstream society. We just kind of do our own thing. Whereas MRAs, they're just embroiled in this gender war, right? And so they have to be involved in mainstream society on some level, and they have to engage in pointless debates with feminists and what have you. One argument I've heard often is that if you don't oppose feminists, if you don't counter their arguments, they'll win. But I don't really think that's particularly relevant, because women's, or rather feminist arguments, that's capital F feminist arguments, are almost always fallacious to begin with, and people buy into them anyway, even countering them. I mean, how often has the gender wage gap myth been just torn asunder and refuted in every which way possible, only to see it continually pop up, 79 cents to the dollar or whatever it might be, or in Germany they'll talk about it. It's everywhere, and without looking at all the data, what the data tell us. So it's just ongoing. Why bother with that? So I think it's tempting to think, if there ever were to be alimony, getting back to the main topic, alimony reform, people might be in the false inclination of thinking, well, look at all this work we've done. This is why we were able to reform alimony. No, most certainly not. If alimony is ever to be reformed, it's not going to be because a bunch of guys went to a campus to picket some feminists or gave a speech at an amphitheater or auditorium. It's because women are going to say, I don't want to pay this alimony anymore. We have to do something more egalitarian or fair. Now, it would be just absolutely draconian if they said only men should have to do this. I don't think it would ever go that way, and I don't think even the United States government, for example, is so blatantly misandric that they'd say, okay, we're going to have this thing and it's only going to affect men. I doubt that would happen. So I think we're on the horizon of possible change to alimony laws, but it's not going to be affected by men. It's going to be all women, all women. But you know what the great thing about all that is that, by going, if you're a MGTOW, if you're going your own way, who fucking cares either way? It doesn't affect you. But I still think it's an important topic to bring up, and it just shows just how powerful the gynocentric forces of our society are. They are the directing force. I say directing force. That is the proxy force, the actual force, the energy that goes into affecting change. The actual doing, that's done by men, of course, but the ones who ask for the change or required are the women. They're the ones who are bringing about that change, be it in the voting booth or whatever. So interesting. I think we will see in the next couple of years some major changes to lifetime alimony, but I think men, specifically MRA, shouldn't jump for joy and think that they've had a victory. It's because women have decided to change that, women who are being affected by that. Anyway, I want to keep this short. I probably should be working on a scripted thing pretty soon. Everyone take care. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.